Meet the Transfers Arizona Wildcats edition. This is one of the best classes in the country this year. They finished ninth on our transfer class rankings. I had them 12th, so this is a little bit higher than I had them. Brian, I think you are pretty high on this class. If I recall
Love
correctly,
this class.
you had them
Love
fourth
this class.
overall, and I'm excited to have you on the video. We'll see what you think. It's a three-man class. Couple guys who could potentially be stars. More on that later. We'll go individually through our expectations for each player. But first, did Tommy Lloyd do what he set out to do with this class, Brian?
I think so. Yeah, he got some complementary pieces to the returning court. They didn't really need backcourt help per se with Jaden Bradley, Caleb Love, and KJ Lewis coming back. But bringing Anthony dell'orso in from Campbell, I think gives you some, at the very, very least, a very good depth piece. We'll get into my thoughts on him a little bit later. You got a very, very good, versatile four-man in Trey Townsend. He was the best mid-major player in the country last year, won that award. And then Awaka from Tennessee is going to bring more of the physicality down low, I think, and him and Krivas form that two-man duo in the front court that Ballo and Krivas had last year. So I think so. You can argue about if they could have gotten higher end guys and more proven players than this trio. But from a role standpoint, they fit exactly what Arizona needed.
Arizona is one of the only teams in the country on paper. I think you could make an argument their backcourt and their front court are equally strong. Like a three-man trio of Bradley, Love, Lewis is one of the best backcourts in the sport. And a three-man trio of Townsend, Krivas, Awaka is one of the best front courts in the sport. So I'm kind of talking myself into Arizona as we go, but I agree with you. They did what they wanted to do. They added the positions of need and didn't touch the backcourt. I think that's mission accomplished for Tommy Lloyd. Uh, what's one thing that could have happened to make this transfer class better in your mind?
I think the only thing is just more proven at the power conference level. And there are not many of those guys around, and they got really, really good in the cases of Townsend and dell'orso. Really, really good, high quality mid major players whose games I think will translate to playing in the now Big 12 and playing in Tommy Lloyd's system in particular. But if you're going to nitpick with this, right, you would have liked to have seen a proven power conference guy sliding in there. But they're just, again, there aren't many of those guys that go around.
Yeah. Given who else left, I don't think there is anything they could have done better. I love Townsend. I think dell'orso is high profile. I think Awaka's great. Maybe if we were going individually through those guys, I'm more down on dell'orso than you are. So maybe I would have advocated for get a maybe just a little higher profile shooter to fill that role than him. But I have no complaints. I think he's great. My issues are not issues, but what I would propose would make this team better isn't necessarily what would make the class better. They lost a bunch of guys I would have wanted to retain, and they brought back the one guy I would not have wanted to retain. And I get that, Caleb Love was the Pac-12 Player of the Year last year. Rest in peace, Pac-12. Caleb, seeing Caleb Love win Player of the Year was enough for that conference to say we're done.
I was going to say that did Caleb Love kill the conference?
It just to me like I would have wanted Boswell and Ballo back, and I would have liked to see what Boswell looks like without Caleb Love, who made RJ Davis look bad at times. Look bad, right?
Yeah.
So he's a tornado, and you built around the tornado instead of building around some cloudy afternoons. That's a decision, and maybe it works with better pieces, but it scares me a little bit. Okay, to the player by player breakdown, we will start with Toby Awaka, who was lowest in points per game of these three for last season. Tennessee's backup big, but did some really nice things, was highly productive in only 13 minutes, averaged 5 and 4. Do the math on what that would look like if he played, 28 minutes instead of 13 minutes. He's probably averaging a double-double, but we will see. What do you make of Awaka's game?
He's going to bring some needed physicality in the front court. You bring that Tennessee mindset over. Probably not going to start. That's Krivas, but Krivas came in to serve. He wasn't much of a change of pace from Ballo. And not that a walk is necessarily a change of pace, but he is going to be the most physical player on Arizona's roster, I believe. Getting him in there, having somebody who can rebound the way that he can, more than likely coming off the bench, is going to give you a very, very big boost. It's going to be a role player. I think it's pretty safe to say we know who the starting five of this group is, and he's not one of them. But he's good enough to play 15 to 20 minutes a night and be very productive in those minutes.
Yeah, I think he's like one of the best backup bigs in the country. I guess the question for me is like, where would he fall on the best starting bigs in the country? But he's also not going to start. But that also intrigue of like why do you transfer out to still not be a starter? Like kind of wonder what's going through his mind on that one. But who knows? Maybe he thinks he can compete. I do think he's clearly the one big defensive weapon they have out of those three. And if Krivas' offense doesn't come together, I do think there's a world where Toby Awaka ends up starting games for this team. Next on the list would be Trey Townsend, the mid-major player of the year, as you alluded to, was awesome for Oakland. Jack Golke got a lot of the headlines with the way he shot Kentucky to victory, but make no mistake about it, Trey Townsend was the best player, not only on that team, but at that entire level in the sport. We saw it here in Michigan. We're Michiganders, and Oakland is in Michigan. We've known about Townsend for years. He's awesome. He's like an unstoppable weapon. He was good against high majors all season long, and he really shined. Like in the NCAA tournament, I thought he played fantastic. It's great for him. He gets an opportunity at a school like Arizona, and I think it's great for him. He gets to play a role for a coach in Tommy Lloyd, who's such a great offensive coach, where there's a lot of freedom, and he's going to have guaranteed 30 plus minutes. I don't think this is just a starter, Brian. I think Trey Townsend is a star for Arizona this year and potentially an All
I do
Big 12
too.
player.
I do too. I do too. What you brought up about how he's done against power conference level competition, I think is incredibly important. Because as we talk about these up transfers, the biggest question is always, okay, will that translate? Well, we've seen throughout Trey Townsend's career, it has translated. And often his better games have come against the better teams that Oakland had played. Now he goes into a system with Tommy Lloyd's offense that seems to be built for him and what he does as a stretch four. He can face up. He's got 3-point range. He can kill you in the post too. He can handle the ball. He's very smart and good passing as well. They're going to run as many non Caleb Love plays as they can possibly run.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Townsend is going to be the guy running most of those sets, a secondary hub, being able to make decisions, do score or make plays for others. It would not surprise me if he is the best or most productive non Caleb Love player on this team.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's my expectation, quite frankly. The question with him is the shot. Like he shot well from three last year, but not on high volume.
Yeah.
So he kind of is a tweener. Like he's small for a Big 12 power forward, and that's okay. He's a very post-oriented player. That's kind of the issue. Like for his 6'6"
Yeah.
height, he needs to be down low. And I think that can work with Krivas. There was some talk during his recruitment that he was looking to play the three, which, if you slide everything the other way and Townsend's playing the three with Krivas at the four and a walk at the five, then I get a little worried about this. Now, it'd be a lot of dudes who can rebound when Caleb Love goes 3 for 21, but I don't like that as much as I like Townsend as the featured four. So I'm hoping that's where this slots in. But man, they're going to use him as a playmaker too. And you mentioned it, but 3.1 assists per game. I think he could have some really prolific numbers given the fit with Tommy Lloyd here. And then the number one guy in terms of points is Anthony Dell'Orso. You love him. We did the breakdown when he committed to
Yes.
Arizona. You specifically requested talking about it because you're so high on him. Tell the people what you think of Dell'Orso and what he's going to look like at Arizona.
He does everything and does everything well. I think when we first had this conversation, when he first committed, it was you and I, and you brought up concerns about how bad Campbell has been with him there the last 2 years. And that I think is very true. It also goes to show the numbers that he has put up, just about, 20 points per game, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, give or take. But roughly he's a 25-5 guy with nothing around him in a system that is slow and relies on him to create everything. Now you put him with Arizona and Arizona's talent, with Arizona's spacing, Tommy Lloyd's offense. Like he's going to just open everything up so much more. He's excellent at creating off the bounce. He's got great positional size. He can make plays for others. He's got one of those like kind of European type feels for the game where he doesn't kill you with his athleticism, but he knows where everybody is. His court mapping is incredible. Knows how to get the ball where it needs to go. He's one of those guys who throws it and it's like always in someone's shooting pocket or where they can do something with it. On top of the fact that he averages 20 points per game roughly. He's not going to come in and start for Arizona. I don't think you bring back both Bradley and Lewis and Love to then start dell'Orso somewhere in there. But he's a starting caliber player to me. in the Big 12. Like he is the guy who swings this. And I think when we look back on Arizona's transfer class at the end of the season, we're going to talk about them and dell'orso in particular as being one of the better transfers and better transfer pickups in the country.
Here's my worry. I'm buying what you're selling, but my worry is this. When I look at his profile and I watch his film, I see a player from last year's transfer class. It's Nick Timberlake. And I would have said all of these identical things about Timberlake before he got to Kansas. And look, by the end of the year, he was playable, but it took him 4 months to get there. And I mean, most of the year, not at times.
Yeah.
Most of the year, he was a disaster. And I just can't shake it. Like I see that guy. Like what
Yeah.
Timberlake was at Towson, I feel like it was very similar to what dell'orso was at Campbell. It can work because I still don't really know what it was that made Timberlake such a bust at Kansas. Like I think it was kind of just unique and individual, and sometimes that happens. But
Mhm.
um, I don't know. If dell'orso's like a really good version of Timberlake, then you're happy still, I think. But it's like PTSD. I see that and I'm like, oh no, I'm falling for it again, you know?
I think there are two differences. I certainly see that. And that's, again, question with anybody up transferring is if that's going to be the case. But I think there are two major differences. I think with Timberlake, he did other things at Towson, but he was a scorer and a shooter. And if those things did not translate, he was not going to be productive. And guess what? Those things didn't translate. dell'orso has a more well-rounded game than I think Timberlake did. And also, Timberlake was a senior at Towson, transferred to Kansas for his fifth year. Like he
True.
built into that player and largely did with experience. dell'orso came in as a freshman, was freshman of the year in the Big South, and last year I don't think he was player of the year, but he was first team All Big South, if I'm remembering correctly. So like he came in and made an impact right away. It wasn't something that he built up to with the benefit of experience. He just did it essentially based on talent and feel alone. It's not to guarantee that he's going to be awesome, but I do think those are some major differences between him and Timberlake that gives me more confidence in him producing than following the way that Nick Timberlake did.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a really good point. Um, yeah, I'm gonna say dell'orso's a role player on this team. Do you think he starts ever? Like, are you that high on him? Somehow he gets there?
I think there will probably be stretches where he does. Maybe there's 5 or 6 games that he starts by the end of the season. Maybe one or two due to injury. Maybe they continue bringing Jaden Bradley off the bench because they don't necessarily like how him and Love and Lewis, um, some repetitiveness in some of those skill sets. They maybe need more creativity with passing, and so maybe you try dell'orso in there sometimes to just kind of shake things up.
A Caleb Love team
Well,
is low on passing, Brian? You don't say.
yeah,
Really?
incredible. Yeah.
Huh.
No, so I think there's that scenario, but if you're Tommy Lloyd looking at this long term, you're going to want Jaden Bradley and KJ Lewis back for next season, unless they get to a point where they're unquestioned starters this season. And if you brought them back this season, you're not going to bench them because you
Yeah.
want them back the following season as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think I would like Arizona more as a team if dell'orso is so good that he has to start and you got to pick one of the three guards to go down. It wouldn't be
Yeah,
Caleb Love. So it probably, I
probably
mean,
should be though.
it would be different, right? Imagine him in like a sixth man extraordinaire role. My opinion of him would change so much, but
Oh yeah,
um, I don't know. It might be Bradley, in my opinion, that goes down. I'm still a little surprised, like they went with Bradley over Boswell. Like, I don't know. I'm still a believer in Boswell based on how he started the season, but we'll see. Either way, dell'orso is going to help this team a lot, give them serious shooting, and it's a great ad. Let's do some superlatives. There's your 3-man class. Who do you think the best player in this class is by the end of the season?
Townsend for sure.
I think it's Townsend too. Who improves the most over the course of the season?
I think it's going to be a Waka.
Mm.
And that's going to bode well for Arizona. I think all three are going to be major contributors, but I think Awaka is going to carve out a bigger role for himself as the season goes on.
Interesting. I'm gonna go dell'orso. You talked me into like as the season, or not even as the season. You just talked me into him as a player. But I think as the season goes on, you could see some rotational movement if dell'orso is who you think he is, and
Mhm.
his shooting and size becomes more valuable than whatever one of the three little guards can give you. Final question. Ooh, what's a hot take for this Arizona transfer class?
Well, I can't say we'll look back on it and it'd be one of the best because I ranked them fourth. They're already one of the better classes. Um, I think going into next season, so we're talking about Arizona at this time next offseason, we're talking about dell'orso as an all Big 12 kind of player.
Wow. Okay. It's hard for me because I feel like most of these guys are pretty proven. Obviously, Delorso's not at the high major level, but um, I'll give a random one. I think that they're going to close games in the Big 12 with Trey Townsend at the 5.
I would like that a lot.
Me too. I'm looking at this roster, and as good as Krivas could be and what Owaka brings you, if you went 3 guards with either Dell'Orso or Carter Bryant with a small ball Trey Townsend at the 5, which by the way is where he was at his best with Oakland. Like he
Yeah.
torched teams with that. That could be
And if you run that against a team that is kind of inept offensively, like
yep.
an Iowa State or Houston, and you're
Yep.
not as worried about the rim protection as much.
Yeah, that's a great call. We just might have solved some things, Brian. I like it. If you want the other 20 videos in our Meet the Transfer series, you can get them on the channel. We're dropping 3 per day, both this week and next week. Thank you for watching. Car, you know what I love about you?
That I'm handsome?
You're reliable. I can count on you. Honestly, you remind me of Aaron Henry a little bit. Remember when their back was against the wall, nothing was going right, and man just showed up every day. He didn't make excuses. There were no problems. There were just solutions.
Sounds like me.
That's you. And it also reminds me of Duncan Mechanical Solutions, because if you're looking for quality furnace repair, look no further than the heating and air experts that you can trust. Comfort and quality are their standard. They're an HVAC company that serves Northeast Indiana and Southern Michigan, whether it's heating and air conditioning, plumbing, kitchen and bath remodeling, or emergency services when you need them most. Duncan Mechanical Solutions has reliable service that you can count on. Cart, remember when your basement almost exploded?
I remember when my basement almost exploded. I remember when my furnace itself was acting funny. I remember when my AC was acting funny. I wish I had Duncan in my back pocket. I wouldn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been anywhere in northern Indiana or southern Michigan that hasn't been perfectly cool or perfectly warm, depending on when the day called for. And that's because of Duncan Mechanical Solutions. They are the presenting sponsor for the month of July. Shout out to Duncan Mechanical Solutions. Go to duncanmechanicalsolutions.com to learn more.